Welcome back to another episode of I Wish They Knew, a show where we share big ideas that deserve more attention in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee. I'm Joe Hirsch. Today's wish comes from Sabina Nawaz. Sabina is an elite executive coach who advises C-level executives and teams at Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, nonprofits, and academic institutions all around the world. She's gotten around a bit. She's written for and been featured in Harvard Business Review, The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fast Company, NBC, NASDAQ, and MarketWatch, among others. And her latest book, and is a good one, is You're the Boss. Become the manager you want to be and others need. And for those of you who are real devotees of the show, you'll remember Sabina joined us back on episode 11, which is prehistoric as far as I'm concerned. Sabina, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Joe. I'd like to say I was a teenager in episode 11.
That's right. You haven't aged a day since.
Thank you.
So what do you wish more people knew?
I wish everybody knew that you cannot be pressure-free from the pressures that surround you from all directions, especially these days, but you can make yourself pressure-proof by following a few simple strategies.
And when you're a manager, those strategies become ever more important. I feel like there's things that managers do, common mistakes, common missteps that they make. What do you make of that? And how do they get around it?
Yeah, and I think, Joe, this is for anybody moving up the management chain all the way to CEO. And there are three things that I notice. One is that the most dangerous time in your career is when you get promoted. The second is that it's not power, but pressure that corrupts your actions and how they land on other people, the impact it has on other people. And the third problem is that the more you know, the less you know. In other words, the less you know about yourself, because power has this property of obscuring feedback. Who's going to speak truth to power, especially when it's not positive news? So those are the three most common things I see happen across the management stack, up and down.
Talk about this obscuring effect of power, because there have to be things that managers do to shrink that gap. What can they do to maintain that authority, maintain their power, yet at the same time put off those unwanted side effects?
Well, first of all, Joe, and this goes back to also that when you're promoted, it's the most dangerous time in your career, is you didn't change when you got promoted, but your circumstances changed. And we think, I got to be me, I got to be authentic, but you actually have to match that authenticity is role specific. I am very different as an authentic partner to my husband than I am to an executive I'm coaching, than I am to my friends. So we want to make sure that the things that are strengths of ours are still seen as strengths by other people. For example, if I'm really detail oriented, as a manager, and especially the higher I go, that's going to translate into micromanaging. If I'm very strategic, people might think I'm being manipulative. So we have to take these lenses that are different from our own, put ourselves on the other side of this power divide and say, how might that look? And the book has a number of these outlines, so you have a cheat sheet to tell yourself.
So it's having a healthy dose of self-awareness, but also a good amount of empathy for understanding the needs of the other person, but also what you are feeling and able to do at this moment.
Exactly. And if you don't have those to begin with, because these things are really important skills, but they take years to develop, they're like a muscle that you're building. Look at the cheat sheet. Look at these things and say, oh, yeah, okay, now I get it. If I'm detail oriented, it is going to show up as micromanaging. What can I do to offset that?
Mm-hmm. It's almost like all of the strengths that enabled that individual to reach this point in their career, those become magnified, and that has a knock-on effect in the relationships that they now have to manage.
Yes. And it doesn't mean that you're going to give up all your detail orientation or all your being strategic. It's about actually clarifying that much more in how you frame your communication, how you set expectations, how you become more transparent about what you're doing.
So it's not how you shrink it, it's how you shape it.
Yes. Ooh, I wish I had that phrase to put in my book. Thank you,
It's
Joe.
not too late. Second edition will be coming out soon enough. It's common for managers to experience that sense of overwhelm on the job. Tell me more about this thing you wrote about in the book called a yes list and why you think more managers should have one.
Hmm. You know, when you have that sense of overwhelm and you've got pressure coming from all different directions, and that's causing you to be snippy and short and impacting the lives of those who work with you and your business results, it's time to roll it back. And that's this idea of a yes list, which is paired with something called micro habits. So if you're trying to shift certain behaviors that are getting corrupted because you're under pressure, for example, let's say you tune out other people when you're in a rush, when you're under pressure. That happens to me sometimes, guilty. You might have a micro habit that in one meeting a day, you're going to simply paraphrase what somebody else said. Not in every single meeting, just one meeting a day. So the characteristic of a micro habit is it should be ridiculously small and you should be able to do it every single day. So you're building the habit. Now, your yes list contains 3 to 5 micro habits, really teeny tiny micro habits. So it might be paraphrase, it might be one push up, it might be taking a break to go up and down my stairs once a day. It could be 3 deep breaths. That's what I mean by micro habit. The yes list then captures these items and simply Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on, you just put a yes, no, or not applicable. So it takes you less than 60 seconds to generate this yes list. And it has a magical effect because then when we say yes, we are more motivated to do that same thing tomorrow. Otherwise, we fail, we're not so excited about picking it up again. So you want to leave on a high note every day.
So having something simple, having something manageable, having something specific, and then tracking and being intentional about your progress, it really shows you a pattern, and that pattern becomes a habit, and those habits become choices, and those choices become who you are.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So well said, Joe.
So the part in the book that really stuck with me, no shock here, is everything you had to say about communication and more specifically, what you call communication fault lines, those breakdowns in understanding and in trust. And I want to highlight a few of those here because these are some of the more common things that we do or don't do well in the workplace. And let me start with uneven feedback. Yeah, shocker. I'm going with feedback first. So you talk about the idea of creating more balance and creating more even feedback by sort of calibrating the ratio, positive to negative statements that you as a manager are delivering to those around you. You talk about a 5-to-1 ratio, and that's good advice. I'm wondering, is the effort and the attempt to try to bring balance into your ratio, positive to negative feedback, could it sometimes lead to forced or contrived feedback that may seem inauthentic to others?
That is such a great question. And you know what, Joe? Almost every executive I coach asks me that as well. I don't want to provide token feedback. I don't want them to have a swollen head. And it's not going to be authentic. It's not going to be real. I guarantee you it will be real. The reason I say that is we are primed to look for the negative instead of the positive.
Yeah.
If you simply pay more attention, you will find it. So let's say your ratio is actually 1 to 5 right now of positive to corrective. It'll take a while. It's not going to happen overnight, but try to get to 1 to 1. And if you go on a hunt, if you go on a scavenger hunt and saying, I'm going to find some positive things, genuine positive things, you will look for them. The other piece to this is the difference between positive feedback and praise. Praise is good job, nice going. That's not useful and it's not authentic often. So when you're providing positive feedback, take the same care that you invest in providing corrective feedback.
Yeah, so it's more meaningful. It's also more replicable because It's who you are. This is how this person gives feedback to me.
Yes.
So this
Yes.
is no different than any other time, but it's also something I can do something with.
Exactly right.
Hmm. So the other one that caught my eye was what you call sage speak, which I thought was great. So is this just where managers are talking down to people like they're know-it-alls, or how does this play out in the workplace?
Absolutely. No manager wakes up in the morning going, I want to lord it all over everybody and be the know it all and give them everything. Instead, their intentions are usually, I want to move fast. I have all this context and data. Let me just dump it on them so that they can hit the ground running. And so I start to speak in generalities, in big terms, don't take the time to provide specifics. And it sounds either very obvious or completely confusing. And this is what results in a number of meetings after the meeting with the boss, where we're all trying to read the tea leaves of what did they really mean. So instead of saving time, now you wasted a whole bunch of people's time.
Yeah. So say what you mean and say it simply.
Simply and specifically.
One of the overall messages that came across pretty strongly in the book was the idea that managers don't have to see themselves and shouldn't see themselves as sole providers, as sort of the sole source, as the fixers for everyone around them. Instead, they should act more like framers. What do you make of that distinction?
Look, Joe, it's a really human condition to want to provide the answers, want to provide the solutions, and if we're being honest, want to show up shiny and smart. Or it comes through noble intentions of my team is so busy right now, let me just jump in and caretake. That would be one variety of sole provider. The others being the straight A student or a flash who can do it faster than everybody else. I might as well just do it because it's going to take less time. Problem being, then you have to keep doing it over and over again.
Yeah. You never get off that train.
You never get off that train. Or you're the whack-a-mole champ. You're hitting as many tasks as are popping up in a day without taking the time to step back and be more strategic about it. So this is a very, very common human desire and need. So what does it do to the long-term health of the organization? People are going to keep coming to you. They're not going to learn how to answer these things or do these things on their own. And then you get frustrated because nobody around me knows how to do these things, or they're just plain lazy. Well, maybe we should look at ourselves and what are we doing to enable that lack of learning, that lack of capacity building in others.
Yeah, we're often the problems.
Yes, much as we don't like to think that.
The book is You're the Boss, and the author, and she gives advice like a boss, is Sabina Nawaz. Sabina, thanks for sharing your wish with us today.
Thank you so much, Joe.